can't be any public comments because there's nobody here.
Yeah, somebody, like, one of the things says references to that discussion in before, if somebody takes the effort to do that.
Okay, so now that it's 5 o'clock, we will officially call this Finance Committee meeting of the whole to order. Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Mayor Miller,
Here.
Alderpersons Borneman,
Here.
McClanathan,
Here.
Ross is absent, Parker is absent, Alderperson Busker,
Here.
Brashaw,
Here.
Misick,
Here.
and Berberay.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. If you could please stand to recite the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And this meeting will be led by Alderman McClanathan.
Thank you, Mayor. Item 4 is approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second. Moved by Alderman Borneman, seconded by Alderman Misick. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Number 5 is public comments. We don't have anybody signed in. Is that correct, Madam Clerk?
Correct.
All right, thank you. Item number 6, approval of the minutes of the October 28, 2019 Financial Committee of the Whole. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Second.
All right, moved by Alderperson Brashaw, seconded by Alderman Busker. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item 7 is presentation of the enterprise fund comprising of the water, sewer, and storm sewer, presented by City Manager Crowe and Public Works Director Carr.
Thank you very much. I didn't want to leave Director Kapansky also out of this, but so this is going to be a tag team between us. The enterprise fund, as we talked, so you have the general fund, or which is the day-to-day running of everything but water, sewer, and storm. And so the enterprise fund is water, sewer, and storm. So this kind of gives a breakdown overview of the enterprise fund. And please, ask questions as we get to each slide. One of the things that you'll notice is the rate increases occurred on the water side, and sewer, we haven't seen the same increases. Why that's important is we're having to do transfers over to sewer. Now, storm this last year, the council voted to increase. We're getting an additional $4 per capital. We just barely had enough stormwater fees to run stormwater. We didn't have any capital. So that $4, we're beginning to see that build, and that's going to, as we saw in the capital plan, that actually, we're going to be doing a stormwater study as we go forward, and then we talk a little bit later about that. So this is water revenue. We are continually, kind of an interesting, as a side note, is we have had in the last 3 weeks, as we've rolled the toters out, we have identified at least 15 properties that people had bypassed, landlords and personnel had bypassed, and their water meters off. And how we discovered it is they called us and said, hey, I didn't get my toters. And then we'd look up and say, hey, there's no water, no consumption, so they weren't getting charged for it. It was showing it. So we've identified those, and we're about 15 properties. I know they're working with the police and code enforcement as we're going forward. So that's just on a side note. Industrial service, so you see a break up of residential, industrial, and commercial. It's based on size of meters, the overall consumption, and the charges that are going up that they are getting it. Late fees, we've really taken around We've really attacked late fees since we've gotten here. We've changed the way late fees are doing it. We've reduced it down to 45 days for shut-off, following the state requirements for notice. We're seeing those late fees. When we got here, Randy and I and Tom had identified close to $1.5 million of outstanding late water charges, and we've whittled those down. We still have some out there. Private fire protection, if they are not in the city, they can hook up to fire if they want to have fire protection, and then as we go down. So these are and then capital improvement surcharge, that's your big number. That's the $34 per month per household. And you're going to see that's building up because we've got the big, so we are opening the bids on the 11th of, or the
10th of December.
10th of December for the new well as we go forward. That's required to be 45 day. And then, you know, that's about $1.7 million approximately. And then the water treatment facility is going to be a $9 to $10 million project. And we'll be getting that going in the June, July timeframe. We're in design work right now on that. So that's building that fund in preparation of that. We're also replacing 2 miles of 3 to 4 miles of water main every year. We're finishing up float here, and we're moving forward. Yeah. So, Andrew, the door's not open, so we'll have to. So that's part of the capital fund. Okay.
Manager Crowe,
Yep.
looking at column 2, I would say the fiscal years, so column 2 from the left, the fiscal year 2019 actual May to April 12-month, looking at that.
That one, yep,
And
that's a
then
12-month.
And then looking at the far right, the proposed budget. There's, if you look at, I know we're not having transfers in and things of that nature. We're looking at, between those two, kind of some reduction in regards to the capital improvement surcharge and some others. Were the projections based on that column, or were they projected on the column just to the left, the proposed 2020 budget? I'm just looking to account for some of the discrepancies.
So that's the actual. What this is based upon the number of residents we have within the community, based upon the surcharge.
Okay.
So we're trying to get our hands really around. So at one point, we had close to 10,000 or 11,000 accounts, and we've reduced those number of accounts after we've gone through and really looked at what the properties are. But we've had some of this too, is you got to remember, this is when we really did a going after outstanding bills that we had, and a lot of liens, a lot of bills were really attacked during that time frame. So that number is high because some of that accounts for that 1.2 million that we had outstanding.
Gotcha.
Because
Thank
the
you.
way it works is after we shut the water off, the capital fund continues to run for one additional year. And that was a change. The council changed that ordinance in 2018. Prior to that, it ran for 5 years. So water expenses, the other thing you'll notice is we've rolled up all of these charges into a single line item. So we were used to be breaking out all of these different ones. That was because of the way it was set up under the Water and Sewer Commission and the way they were breaking out where everybody was based upon that. So I worked with the auditors. They recommended we roll that all up into one. Start eliminating some of these line items out here. Because everybody was charging on the medical, you see that. That's our cost. IMRF, again, principal cost, big expenses. This is from the operating and maintenance. So we talked about capital. This is your water operation O&M fund. This is what you get paid for your consumption of your water. That's what pays for this. This is not paid for by your capital fund. All right. Administrative expense to the city, this is, Randy, that's for legal fees, that's for human resources, negotiation of contracts.
Manager Crowe,
Yeah,
about 60% of the way down, construction supplies and equipment and mains, materials and supplies, those two lines.
those two lines are, so when we do go out and do a repair, the repairs, if we have a water main break, that's where that, correct me if I'm wrong, right, Tom? That's where that line item, those two line items are where we do, if we have a water main break, that's where those repair, they have to go out and order the pipe, they have to go out and order if we have to put a clamp on it, that's where that's paid for.
Correct. And let's see, one thing with it, if I could go and add, is that, you know, we have water mains, we have clamps. I mean, that's one particular item, but then when we get road stone and concrete, you know, I sort of want to go and more finely delineate what purchases we make to go to what line items, just for our tracking purposes and for the financials.
Chair,
Alderperson Breshaw.
thank you. Manager Crowe, I noticed the telephone expenses when I look at the 2019 actual expense, 13,166, and it's going down to 7,500. Is that a typo, or?
No, so that's, Kurt's not here, but Eric is. We've gone out and really done a hard look at our machine-to-machine costs, which are our transmitting costs, phone lines that are that we don't need, plus as we've consolidated everybody down to Island, that's eliminated and centralized the phone lines. So this is some of the savings that we're seeing through creating an IT department and bringing Public Works, water and sewer under one, streets, water and sewer under Public Works.
Thank you. Chair?
Go ahead.
Thank you. So that's great. That looks like a $6,500 savings, but if I may continue, there's another one, though, that looks like there's an overage. Outside services bank fees, 2019 actual was 608, and it looks like it's going up to 2,500. Is there a reason for that estimation to be so high?
Well, so this is where is that? Which one?
500.17.
1.7, outside fees. Okay, so that is the projection year to end. You gotta go back to 2019 to compare it. Or outside services, look at the wrong line. That one there, not postage. Which one are you looking at?
I was looking at the second column over future year 2019 actual May to April 12 months. It says 608. I didn't understand that line item compared to what it will be for 2020 proposed budget.
For outside services.
Outside services bank fees, yes.
Well, so that outside services bank fees went from, so when you look back at, go ahead, Tom.
Let's see, in this presentation of the 80 account, plus then when we start to discuss the 81 account, you will see in the 81 account that there's two separate line items. So rather than having three, we're sort of consolidating everything to where, you know, there's a little bit of duplication. So we're, you know, if we go from 2 to 1, you're going to naturally see an increase, because rather 2 at $500, you have 1 at 1,000. It's the same amount. It just looks a little different.
And you're gonna see some more and more consolidation as we bring the new software on, and as well as we're working with US Bank on how we're processing fees. The goal is to get more people on ACH transfer and also using the PSN network. And we have actually sent out, did it go out in next month's bill? Is it next month's bill?
Should go out next month's bill.
that we're gonna encourage more and more people to do that, because that actually, you know, we're handing a large amount of cash down, and this will eliminate some of that cash and eliminate some of the processing fees, so.
Thank you for that explanation.
So,
Chair.
Go ahead, Alderperson Bradshaw.
Thank you. Manager Crowe, I do want to say we appreciate your integrity and your attention to detail, as well as your department staff. When we look at a ledger like this, it's mind-boggling. There are so many pages and so many figures, and we have no idea specifically what your departments are spending, and so all we can look at are the line items. So please don't feel like I'm picking
no,
on one person.
I didn't feel like that, so. And you'll see the transfer to Fund 81 here, that's what we were talking about. That's that transfer over to sewer.
And we have an anticipated transfer to storm also this year.
Yeah, that's the stormwater collection right there, the capital fund for storm, that's actually being collected on the water bills.
Same thing then with the transfer to street capital.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, the street capital's being collected on the water bills and transferred over.
Alderman Burberry.
Thank you. Manager Crowe, on the last page of water expenses at the top, bad debt expense, actual 2019, $2,200, projected 40,000.
This is we always put this as a, we're estimating high here. It's just as we go,
Estimated write-offs.
estimated write-offs.
Okay.
So it's a plug number.
It is.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Alderman Weiss.
so question as well, the depreciation expense immediately after that, I see that it's significantly less. Is,
To balance the budget. We're running about $700,000 in depreciation, but I think we only budgeted $273,000 at this time.
And some of that is we are bringing on new equipment, new facilities.
so is that, follow up,
Go ahead.
is that a benefit that we're having by rental of or leasing of equipment, or like, I'm trying to understand.
So that is a benefit. You know, we're leasing our, we're not purchasing. In fact, the next step is we're working next with the 5 tons that we're going to be leasing. Enterprises, we're going to be at one of their test beds for leasing of our large trucks. So that's one of the benefits from that, is we don't carry that depreciation cost.
That's a good chunk of change. Thank you for following up on that.
Manager Crowe, talk to me about the last two lines there, loss on disposal of assets, and then the emergency fund cash reserve. I assume since we're talking enterprise fund, this is different than the general reserve.
That's right.
So could you explain?
I'm going to ask Director Bucus to.
And the first one, loss of disposable assets, that's just a ballpark figure that we threw in. We don't know what that number really will be. If anything, it might be 0.
What accounts for that disposal of assets? Like, give me some examples. Like, what could we see on that? Very generic.
Basically, just equipment that we're no longer using. Because it's not, we can't really, it's just basic equipment that we may have to retire.
So some of the new, unlike our enterprise lease vehicles, Caterpillar doesn't resell the vehicles that we're leasing, or Deere, I guess we're leasing from Deere.
John Deere.
Yeah, they're not reselling them, so then we're responsible for reselling them ourselves.
And then your second question on the emergency fund cash reserve, we currently have one bank account that has water and sewer money in there for emergency purposes, and we're trying to add to it.
Okay.
You should have reserve for both. The direction from council right now is an overall reserve for the operating budget, for the operational general fund, we do, but we're trying to do the same build-up on,
Oh, it makes
Enterprise.
sense, for a variety of reasons, you know, economy, emergencies, et cetera. It's, I mean, it's good planning. I just, hadn't seen that much before until very recently, so, thank you.
So, one of the things you, with back there going with software, is we found out, 6 weeks ago that Neptune, is not, by the end of 2020, is no longer going to be, well, our current system is no longer going to be, supported. So we're going to have to replace all of our Neptune, is it the meters or
No,
just the software?
no, just the software.
So, and we want to make sure it's working with our new, new financial software too. So sewer revenue, residential, industrial, and commercial, it's broke out the same way.
Manager Crowe, on the residential service, when you explained previously that on the water fund, some of the discrepancy in regards to the revenue on that versus projected was due to collection, is that also the case in the residential service discrepancies?
It is.
Okay.
So, you know, we have made and I'll give credit to two people, well, three, Michelle, right, Richter, Denise Sorn, and Diane are responsible for really lowering, I will tell you, I think Denise Sorn missed her calling. She should have been a collection agent.
Yeah.
So she has done a fantastic job.
Chair,
Alderperson Bradshaw.
I'm going to tell her you said that.
And you see the transfer to Fund 80s right down there. And we were, so you know, when Randy and I and when the team here got together, we had a $7 million deficit in sewer. I mean, because they weren't transferring any money over into this. So we've gotten this, we're working our way down into it, so.
What are the accountants recommending regarding management of these funds going forward?
They're recommending combining water and sewer into a single fund.
When can we anticipate seeing something like that?
We're waiting until the new software comes on board.
Okay.
And we will be presenting the software to council, the new financial software at the committee of the whole recommendation as we go forward. And then we'll start implementation,
2021.
So, well, the new software will actually be brought on board in 2020.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, we're gonna combine.
I thought you meant budget. We'll combine them in 2021, but yeah.
Sewer expenses, again, we're rolling up these line items, labor.
Manager Crowe.
Yep.
On about 3/4 of the way down, PEP contributions, non-bargaining, both on this one and then on the water. I just didn't ask back then. There's some substantial discrepancies in regards to the amounts on the 2019s versus projected budget. What accounts for those changes?
I'm gonna turn to my financial, because he has all the notes. I think I know what it is, but.
It has to do with salaries.
Okay. I thought you might say.
And
All right.
that's exactly
Fair
what I
enough.
was thinking, so.
Thank you.
So the equipment building outside is our move to a SCADA is one of the things, as well as we're doing some additional work.
Chair,
Alderperson Bradshaw.
Thank you. Manager Crowe, as I look over at the proposed future year 2020 budget, there's a whole line of zeros there. Can you explain
That's,
some of that?
so what we've done, as we talked about earlier, we've rolled all these up into this single line right here. So this was a recommendation from the accountant, our auditors, to roll those all up. And it will help us ultimately with, as we bring our financial software on board.
Got it. Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Alderman Misick.
So, Manager Crowe, the auditor I know had made a suggestion on combining water and sewer. And I know that was simply a recommendation. And as we're moving forward, I can see the benefit of the software working in our favor. Is there a plan to do any type of integration when we have the software?
So
What was the overall plan?
Well, so because the way, really water and sewer are the only funds that we can combine into a single fund because they're run basically out of the same department. Have the same department, utilities director, and they work for the public works director. So it's easier to combine them into, and it has to do with where we're basically the same bills come in, and the software will actually take in from reading from Neptune. We'll be able to track the bills, collect the bills, and then it'll automatically go up to, right now, we're going to take the information from that Neptune gets into Civic and hand jam it into our Locus system right now. And then it's going to tie all this together. Additionally, that software will, for paying of salaries, it'll also track vacation and sick time, and they'll get that on the statement, and that's something all the unions have requested. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes, thank you. So there's a direct benefit with the new software, and it would make sense at that point in time to reevaluate, right?
Well, the reason, so honest, combining them is because you're running a deficit, because all of our increases, all the increases that occurred were on the water side. And we were not doing, the majority of the increases were on the water side. But they're single enterprise funds. So what you're doing is, because you're keeping them separated, it looks like we're running a deficit in sewer when we're actually in the plus overall between the two accounts. So because they are the same accounts and on the same water bill, you can combine them into two.
Yeah, thank you.
So expenses coming down. Again, another transfer to the city administratively. And you see that, so. Meter and equipments, starting to see that. Equipment supplies as we go, we're gonna start doing that changeover to, for the SCADA system. So, and now I'll bring this to attention here, because if you noticed, as I put out to you guys, the MPDS permit, we've actually been, because of the issues we've had with violations on the MPDS permit and some other things that are going on, we're going through a desk audit right now, directed, and we are going to be directed, the state has directed us to make some changes in our sewer ordinance. That's IEPA, so we're gonna, sometime in the next 2 months, you're gonna be seeing, and Aaron's already looking at that, he's not here right now, he'll be here later. He's working with Tom to get those changes made.
What are the issues that they're looking to address?
Well, let's see, This paperwork's been going on for roughly 2.5 years, and they just took a look as to what the municipal code or the ordinance was for the commission, and there's probably about 30 items that they make suggestions on to go and update. And to me, a lot of it is lawyerese to have it in the proper format, but then it's also tied to certain parameters of the NPDS permit, so we all have it to be a good, clean bill or ordinance.
One of the things I didn't mention, so the depreciation expense that I think Alderman Mizek, you asked about depreciation, that is actually a figure that is generated by our audit firm. They do the depreciation for us. Working with Michelle on that.
Chair.
Alderman Burberry.
Manager Crowe, what is 2014 A and B bond interest? I know it's bond interest. What are those funds? Where do they go?
So
Come from?
that is, which one is it? 24? Which one's the big four?
That's part of it. 2014, A and B are both sewer bonds for work that was done.
And 2014 was the year in which they were.
Those are the bonds. So when you get a bond, that's the year that we get the bond money. And the
Okay.
way it works for capital expenses is we have 3 years to expend that bond money. That's where we're getting in with the road bond. You have, as part of the bond agreement, we have 3 years to expend it, but we pay it back anywhere from 15 to 20-year period.
Okay. Thank you.
The vac trucks, you'll see the camera truck go back. Camera truck, vac truck, those are, they're listed as interest, but those are all leasing programs we have. And the vac trucks, actually, the camera trucks worked out really nice. If you don't know, our lease, for those that are new on the council, actually, they have flyaway modules for us. And we have a state-of-the-art, when one of those modules come out, they fly out with a new module and replace it within, about 72 hours, Tom?
48 to 72 hours.
48 to 72 hours. We had to use it a couple times. And that is a truck they'll want back from us to resell, and then we'll get it releasing a new truck. And so.
Chair,
Alderperson Bradshaw.
I'm sorry, Manager Crowe, did I interrupt you?
No, it's.
I'm looking at line item 900.11, fee in lieu of property tax. I'm looking
Yes.
at 2019 was 51,000, now it's 77,000.
And that's based upon the fees that we have to, so this is a line item that is basically left over from the Water and Sewer Commission as we go forward. And this is the transfer of money from the operation of water and sewer. You had the same thing on the water side, that help pay for human resources, my salary, the engineers, so public works director's salary, our Tommy's salary, and finance. I think Michelle's is in there, some of Randy's is in there. Basically, it's coming from the O&M.
Follow?
Go ahead.
So this is just partial salaries, and when it says in lieu of property tax, rather than have tax revenue transferred over?
Well, so this was, as I said, this was a line on, so the way it works is because this is considered a business-like activity, we have to physically identify that it's transferred, because we're treat water and sewer and storm like a business. So they get taxed, we actually have to, we don't have to pay property tax on it, but we have to pay sales tax on electric we have to pay, when we pay off electric, we have to actually pay electric bills. So like all these buildings, we don't pay electric bills on City Hall, we don't pay electric bills on Island. What we do, pay electric bills on the water and sewer plant. But some of this, so what we did, what there are is you, rather than charging them property tax, we're transferring the money from the revenue over to us to pay for the services we're providing. So one of the things that's not calculated into here is, so we are supposed to be receiving a 60% to 65% savings on our electric bill. We have not, based upon the installation, if you don't know, we have one of the 10 largest arrays for wastewater treatment facilities at our wastewater treatment facility. Keystone, Keystone's interested also looking at our water treatment facility as we build our new one to integrate panels into the roofs. But they are, we do not know what our real savings are going to be. That's their calculated it, and so we have not put that in the budget. That could reduce our overall electric bill. The $125,000 is the consulting. We have down for consulting fees for the installation of the sewers, both on Adams as well as the 3 streets up that are having their septic fields fail, that we're going to have to, because it has always been a city ordinance that once the septic fields fail, they have to connect in. We have to put sewers in through that area, and we'll actually be doing some additional sewer work as we're related to that. So that's actually the design work. So stormwater revenue, you see, this is the, we were transferring money now straight out of the budget. There's still that money being transferred, but now it's an actual line item that's on the water bill. Before, we were just transferring money from the water capital and water revenue. So there's not really that change out here for the amount, because that's designated. Plus, you have your capital improvement up there, your surcharge. Stormwater, the big thing here is the consulting fees. And this is to start working. We have 135,000 for stormwater study throughout the city. It's never been done. And then we have consulting fees for additional installation and changes we need to do as we go forward with some of the bigger retention areas. We want to once we gain control of, we have gained control of one retention area. Right now we're in the process, hopefully at the next administrative hearing, to gain control of another one. We have some work that we have to do down in the Navajo area, in Alderman Borneman's ward. We have houses that are built right along that detention pond, which we've got to reshape. All of these require reshaping. Then we have some smaller projects. First, Alderman Brashaw's ward, Alderman Borneman's, and Alderman Clanathan's are the big work, but we also have work downtown. We have some collapsing storm sewers that we have to fix that run underneath the rail lines that we have to fix. And then if we don't fix them, so that's all consulting fees to help in there.
Chair?
Alderman Burberry.
Manager Crowe, you mentioned the 135 for a storm water study. It's throughout the city. It's never been done before?
It's never been done before.
We've been doing this piecemeal for how long?
Well, actually, no, what's been happening is there was no no plan as to how to address stormwater.
It's like a capital plan, this will be a way to get another plan for storm sewer.
Right, this will actually go into the capital
Okay,
plan.
right. Thank you.
It's similar to, as we had done the street assessment and the hydraulic study for the water.
Thank you.
So we talked about consulting fees. So that it's $50,000 in large projects. Okay, now we're gonna go to the change. Are there any topics on the enterprise fund? Any questions? So,
Alderman Borneman.
With regards to the consulting and the plan for the stormwater, do you have a time frame for when that plan can be kind of identified and put in place?
so the consulting, I'm gonna turn to Dennis because he's the stormwater expert on that.
We have not given, or we have not been given an ETA on the finished part of that plan yet. I know I've seen a little bit of the concept on it, but they've got a lot of different pipes checked. It's just trying to lump in the whole area together. I haven't gotten a chance to go over that with Fairgram yet, to figure out when they're gonna have that delivered to us.
Okay, thanks.
So, council asked us to go back, look at some more detail on the communications director. So I actually have a rough job description here. This is a combination, we've collected data from over 35 communities in the state of Illinois that have communications directors, PR directors, and picked it out. What we are, some things we believe that they should be doing. And okay. It's kind of a more detailed job description than the one we had the last time. So here's what we looked at for funds. Reduction in the police department across various things to result in a $12,500 savings. MIS savings reduction resulting in some of these in the MIS department and in the police department were already taken care of in this fiscal year. So these are not things we're depriving ourselves of, but they've been taken care of, so we've moved them forward. That will result in savings of $29,300. We have a current surplus of about $22,000 here. And what we're proposing, and I've already met with the executive director and the president of the hotel of the Greater Freeport Partnership, holding back $25,000 in hotel motel tax. That holding back will require us to modify our ordinance, just so that everybody knows if this is your desire. That gives us a total of about $88,000 to work with. What we have looked at is, so the communities of our size are running in the area of $45,000 to $63,000. The high end, the gold-plated one, is the $63,000 one. That is Carbondale. That person does movie production, they do tourism, they do everything. We are not needing that tourism, but just so you're aware of that. But based upon a $47,000 salary, this is the back, gives us $76,000 overall cost based upon the other sunk costs on this. That does the $88,000 gives us a little bit of leeway as we go forward with this. So that's the additional work. I want to thank Deborah and Abigail Mowry for doing, Abigail's our intern. She ultimately wants to become an HR director, but the work that the two of them did in helping putting this together, as well as Randy. So with that, I will ask questions here on that.
Alderman Meiser.
So, thank you. Thank you, Manager Crow, for the further details. So just going through this, it appears there is a real opportunity here to help promote the city. And when the city is promoted in a more like proactive sense, I can see having benefit directly to the city, like having, you know, an increase in tourism and so forth, and really the positive energy that comes from having that higher level of communication. And I don't know that this would be easy to quantify, but some assumptions that go along those lines. I think looking at the surplus and where the additional funding needs to come in, and thank you for bringing up that point on needing to amend an ordinance, right, along those lines. I personally think this is a really great opportunity, and now that we're getting some more detail on it, I'm excited about pursuing this further.
And one of the things I want to point out about the writing of the news articles, when I'm talking about writing the news articles, I'm not talking about the mayor's or mine. You know, as we talked about the last meeting, we are absent a reporter outside of our esteemed Brad from here from the radio station. But basically, even I was surprised even this weekend reading the high school summary, the reporter's out of Rockford. Derek's not even doing, I don't know, Derek's not even doing that anymore. So this is the idea. Basically, we've been told whatever articles we can provide to the newspaper, they'll run it. And so I'm thinking setting up this communications director to write news articles like every other day, or get with departments. One of the things I know the community development director, Director Zubkoff, and I have talked about is writing an article about, so people understand the process for code enforcement. So when you write code, iWorks, you submit a thing into iWorks or TextMyGov, you understand what the process is and why that process is not immediate and occurring in the hearing process. But also getting out and taking, you know, I'll give credit to Dean Wright because he told me this is, you know, getting a sign out there when we're redoing a road and say, road brought to you by the city of Freeport, and take pictures of it and write an article about everything we're doing in the way of that road.
Manager Crow, in discussing the communications director position in regards to our staffing as a whole, since we've gone to the city manager form of governments, what are our full-time employees from when you started versus now?
So we had 194 billets when I started, and we're down to 178.
And we talked about establishing a general fund reserve. We talked about potential surplus of 22,000 here. What progress have we made on establishing that reserve to date?
We're at 1.3 million, I think was the figure we looked at last week.
Right.
And what, if anything, I don't recall from the general fund, what do we have targeted for that for this year?
So I'll have to ask Randy, he'll look at it. The target for the council was, the first year we had $1 million set aside, and then 250,000 per year. And that's money that can only be touched with council permission.
What's that?
I got questions.
I just wanted to see, well, or while he's looking up the number, but.
Yeah, we were budgeting 250,000. I don't see a line item for it.
Because I know we set aside another 250,000 for this year.
Okay, if you could get back to me on that portion later on. Alderman Borneman.
Thank you. The $25,000 will be taken from what we're contributing to the GFP. You mentioned that you've been in contact and communication with them about that. How would that affect their funding?
So this year, the, when we set up this fund with the GFP, it was we were gonna give them 450,000 until they got really rolling and until they were able to get other contributions. This year, they've received an additional commitment from the county to raise their commitment from 25,000 to 100,000. So they're actually going, even though we're gonna reduce our contribution from 25,000. The other thing that we've talked about is as the TIF districts, as we've seen growth down in the TIF districts, I mean, Lamb Road, we're seeing another business, or 2 more businesses open down there. We can give additional money for the TIF. Why we can't use TIF for this is hotel motel tax can be used for marketing of the community that can generate basically heads and beds for hotel room nights. Go ahead.
So in your discussions with the GFP, this doesn't appear to be a detrimental amount of loss. The $25,000, we direct it towards the city, and we'd be able to accomplish some things that are specific to benefit the city, not just the area.
That's correct. And my discussions with Gary Quinn, who's the president of the board, he was very receptive to this. You know, by us telling them now they can build it in, they've shifted their fiscal year to the south, so they match our fiscal year. And what's nice is us and the county, since we're on the same fiscal year, so this makes it very easy for the GFP to budget.
So you were saying, obviously we were at 450, we put us at 425. County's going up from 25 to 100.
That's correct.
So from just looking at the 2 government entities, it's a net of 50 for them based on what they're doing this year, and we're still a substantial contributor.
Yes, and they've picked up some additional contributions, like TriStar Metals is now, I heard today, I think it was 38, so they have membership and then they have contributors. And they've gone to 38 contributors, which are people that give more than $1,000 into the, TriStar, I know, gave $5,000 to them this year. And they've pledged $5,000 going out.
And obviously, long-term, the more diverse of a funding stream they have, the more engaged I think the partners will be, and that's healthy.
The goal is when we established this, because I was part of the first establishment of the board, was the government partners would be the leads up until by year 4, we wanted to shift where 60% of the funding was from the non-governmental partners. And that's the goal ultimately, because the companies, they're looking to get, Berner has stepped away from the Greater Freeport Partnership, and they're looking to get them back involved. Honeywell, they're asking for a bigger increase as well as they've moved in. MetLife has really moved up their contribution, as is now TriStar.
Alderman Borneman.
Thank you. One thing you pointed out is that some of the savings, some of the funding will come out of the police department budget. It looks like $6,000 is going to be a result of reduction in vehicle maintenance. So I guess I have a 2-part question. One, is that due to just us having newer vehicles in that department? And my second question is the reduction of the $12,000 shouldn't result in less officers being employed or less public safety, correct?
Well, I'll let Chief Summers talk about vehicle maintenance. One of the things, we have replaced a lot of our older vehicles in the fleet.
With the new vehicles and moving to the SUVs that are heavier built vehicles, I would anticipate a reduction in the contracted vehicle maintenance on those vehicles.
And then we are not reducing officers at all in the police force. One of the taskers you've given us from the strategic plan is look at the overall structure, and we've had at least 2 conversations about the overall structure and where we need to drive that. But that's the long-term discussion point as we go forward with it. But that's not We will not reduce any of the street officers. We're not reducing any of the officers that are in patrol or the detective bureau. We may see some structural changes within those, but.
Manager Crowe, I'm looking at, you said you looked like 35, I think, different entities where you got this job description from. Do any of the entities handle this through contracted outside? And what would be one of the biggest detractions to looking at it for contracting outside versus what you're proposing?
So when I reached out to this, there were two entities that Rochelle started as a contractor, and they moved it into in-house because what they found was the person needs to be sitting at the table, listening to the department heads, talking with the department heads, interacting with them on a daily basis to understand what's going on in the city. And they felt like that they were not getting, because they weren't there. I'll use an example. We're sitting in the department head meeting and we say, okay, we're delaying Fields of Freeport, or we're now doing Fields of Freeport, so they can go up there with the cameras, take the pictures as they're laying the asphalt. If they were a contractor here, they would not necessarily get that interaction. The other thing is we have more direct control over the product and the message. That is the feedback that we got when I was at the national convention, was those who did contractors felt like at times they lost control of the content. It did not meet their requirements.
And even if we do install this position, our full-time employee numbers are going to be down, what, around 7.75 or 8% from where they were when you took over?
That's correct.
Any other further budget discussion as we've kind of done 7, 8, and 9? Alderman Parker.
I've always concerned against the communication director position before, and I need to get a hard copy of this new stuff that just came out. But my biggest concern is, I can see a lot of positives, but do we have a method to evaluate the performance of the person after a year or so to see if they're worth the money we're paying them in that? Plus, as I spoke before, with the census coming up, and if we lose home rule, we're going to be making major cuts. And I have a hard time myself adding a personnel 1 year before we have the census come up, so which could cause cuts. But I just would like to get copies of this, and that's my hard problem right now, and a way we can evaluate a year from now whether he is doing the job and making the money back to the city through all his stuff and helping us. So, thank you.
And that deals with the performance measures as we put down, because as we talked about earlier, one of the guidelines I'm having is each one of the department heads are going to develop their own performance measures. One of the things we'll track is one of the performance measures is the number of Facebook engagements, the number of articles that are written, number of overall, one of the things is I think the mayor and I will start back up. We need to start back up the coffee house where we sit question engagements, town halls, overall the general message. One of the things we've seen is since we've started the newsletter up, we've gone from distributing 200 newsletters to now almost 650. In fact, we got this week's, and I will tell you, our newsletter looks like it was put together. I hate to say this because I started it. It looks like it was put together by a bunch of people that were writing articles, and there isn't a coherent message. And that's one of the things, and as we get more and more people with that newsletter is a real good, tool to be used. The other thing that I've found it, and I've learned a lot, I learned stuff, with every mistake I learned something. And one of the discussions that we've had over the last 4 weeks on the garbage rollout is, so we put the we put the newsletter out, we talked about it for 3 weeks, 3 months, we put the 3 months worth of news articles, we even got interviewed on by two of the news stations. I talked about it, 6 months? on the radio, ran the articles, put it on Facebook. We've had 4 people call us, says, I don't get the newspaper, I don't read Facebook, I don't look at the website, I don't listen to the radio, I don't watch TV, and I don't pick up the newsletter. I didn't know we were gonna get toters. So that's one of the things that the communications director will be required to do is, how do we communicate these people? I will tell you, Kirsten's broken one of the codes, and with the PDM grant. So she has gone out and done monthly mailers with everybody on east of the Pecatonica. And with all of the information. And with that, we've increased from 66 homes, residential homes, to almost over 132 was our last number that we had originally. 139. And that was strictly a combination going, finding a way that can break through and get to reach people. And that's one of the things. The other thing is you, as a council, have tasked us with generating a communications plan. And that's one of going to be the strategic communication plan that will sell the strategic plan, sell the capital plan, sell the city. And that's going to be one of the goals we have here.
We're at 6 o'clock. Any other discussion for tonight?
Yeah, just with regards to this position, when is the decision going to need to be made by the council?
So when you approve the budget, that's when I'd like to have the decision made, because that's got to be built into this budget.
And when is the deadline for that?
So we are going to bring from the department head's point of view, the budget's locked. We locked the budget last week. This is our last presentation. We're going to bring out the levy, do the first presentation on the levy. If there are any other changes, and then November, the second meeting in November, we're going to do the first reading of the budget, and we're also going to approve the capital plan. And at that point, we do the first reading of the budget. That'll be the first time we'll set aside the discussion as to whether we're going to. That's the point where we'll need to approve the communications director. I'll work with Attorney Zito and Attorney Sosnowski. We need to formally approve that.
Just lastly here, this is more of just something for council to think about and the public to consider as well, but I think Mr. Misick brought up, the benefits of this are probably somewhat hard to quantify, and I agree with Mr. Parker that the performance might be somewhat hard to evaluate. This is definitely a commitment. It's a big commitment. It's $76,000 is what we have budgeted after, obviously that's not the salary, but those are the sunk costs into this, but I do think it's a commitment to change, to moving forward in the right direction. It's about having a sense of urgency about our town moving in the right direction. It's about being competitive amongst the other communities in the area. And I don't think it's something we're doing just because other towns are doing it. And I wouldn't advocate to do something just because somebody else is doing it. The reason we want to do this is because other towns are doing it and it's bringing them success, and it's a reason the results are worth it. So that's just something to consider. I do acknowledge, and I think Mr. Parker brings up some good points, but at the same time, it's a commitment, and I think it's a commitment worth making. That's my position on it.
Anything further on budget discussion? All right, we did 7, 8, and 9 kind of together. Presentation of the fund, communication director presentation, and budget discussion. Are there any public comments for the finance committee of the whole before we adjourn and then go to our regularly scheduled meeting, other regulars? Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, second. All right, second by Misick, first by Borneman. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, meeting's adjourned.
Let's take a 5-minute break.
Okay.
Boy, that's pretty good timing.
Perfect timing.